water thing on alphabet.
Thank you very much. This is the regular meeting of the Budget and Finance Committee. We have a quorum. All members are present. We have 6 items on closed session. Before we go into closed session, let me ask the committee if we can go on consent items number 9, 10, 12, and 16. If we can concur on that, there's a couple of requests I have on a couple of 9, 10, 12, and 16.
I don't have a problem. I don't know anybody else does.
Let me just ask on number 9, if we can ask for that report coming to council whether we ask that it include also the LA Unified School District Police booking, so we can get an idea of all of that revenue coming in, and also to ensure that we be made aware whether any of these booking fees were part of the 0809 adopted budget. That's for number 9. For number 10, just ask that the CLA and the controller or the Department of Finance get together and resolve how this issue may have occurred and how we could have caught it earlier with double payments on the same date, and how we also had recently a issue in which a refund came to council and we had to adjust it because it was late in paying it. We want to find out if those systems can be corrected, that we're not adding interest because of our systems that are in place. And then number 12. Although this is probably not the best example, but one of the items that General Services is basically said is outside of statute, I'd like the CLA to get with Department of Finance and find out if or with General Services and find out if this is one of the kinds of debts that should go to our outside firms that are working on contingency. Even though it's out of statute, I understand some of those firms will continue to go forward on these cases. Anything else on those? So we'll move those for consent. We'll go to closed session on items 1 through 6. Then we'll come back on the regular agenda with item 7.
Excuse me, Chair, I believe there is an amendment to number 10. The department has requested to come to the table.
All right, let me ask number 10. Thank you.
Hi, June Ulrich with Office of Finance. This refund had been submitted to Budget and Finance Committee on 4/21, and because of the time it's taken for it to finally get on the agenda, we need to increase the authorized amount to $591,358.23.
Okay, that's just on the, because of the interest?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get, and when will this go to council? Is there a placeholder for that? So we're not adding to the interest?
In the next 2 weeks, it will go forward to
As
council.
long as it's
So this will
approved
cover the next 2 weeks?
within June, yes.
Within June? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, we walked in a technical correction to item 16 this morning, and basically splits the amount, the reimbursement between related costs to the general fund and those to reimburse the mayor's salaries budget.
This is the item that was passed out today?
Yes.
On the technical correction?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All members read the technical correction? Okay. So we'll add that to number 16 on consent. Okay. We'll go now on the items 1 through 6 on the closed session. quorum. Mr. Weezer, is he coming?
We lost him in the hallway.
Okay, all right, so we have a quorum, Ms. Gruhl, Mr. Smith, Mr. Rosenthal, and myself, Bernard Parks, as chair. Next item.
Item number 7 is a communication relative to the appointment of Sally Choi as the general manager of the Los Angeles City Employees Retirement System.
What does she know about anything?
Hello.
Do a Ron.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So we wore you out in the budget process, I see.
What's that?
We wore you out in the budget
Yes.
process. Yeah. So Sally, why don't you give us an idea in the sense that you're really going back home, because you've been there for a number of years, what some of your goals are and what some of the issues you think are most relevant for the city as you go back and assume these responsibilities.
As you said, I'm going back home, and really what my goals are to really advance Lacers and elevate them to the next level. They have implemented a strategic plan that really elevated the system to be a more premier pension plan and implementing best practices. We have very, very talented staff there, as well as very successful investment consultants and managers. Have you seen the very positive returns over the last 4 years with respect to the investment portfolio? So really, I'm going to be going in there to strengthen the financial stability of the fund, whether any kind of economic downturn or, ups and downs in the stock market, and advance the system forward. Some of the challenges we see up ahead is really what our June 30th investment returns will be, which will establish the new contribution rates for fiscal year 09-10 for the city. But you will be, as you know, the system has various systems in place to really manage through volatility in the market. So you have assets moving, you have, as you know, we are longtime investors looking at a longer-term investment horizon to weather any kind of storm within the markets. That's going to be an ongoing challenge for the system and the board. In addition to that, we're looking at ways to contain costs for healthcare. As you know, the Lacers administers the retiree health plans for 14,000 retirees and beneficiaries, so continuing to look at strategies to reduce healthcare costs and premiums for retirees and for the system. And also just continuing to improve the service, the quality of the service, the accuracy and accountability of the system. That will be an ongoing challenge that we will put on ourselves. And also looking at the best findings and recommendations from the independent audit that was done of the 2 pension systems, and looking at what from there can be used to implement to advance the system.
Let me just ask, when you mentioned healthcare, would you see any lessons learned on the recent RFI that the Personnel Department completed about the health plans for existing employees? Would that be something that would be of assistance dealing with retirees?
Absolutely. In fact, I would like to see a better partnership between the 2 plans or administrations, because as you know, the active employees eventually go into the retiree health plan. So you want to bring in healthier, active employees that will, in the long run, reduce the retiree health plan costs. But in looking at what they've done, and this is something that the Lacers Board has continued to look at, looking at 5-year forecasting and the liabilities of the health plans, looking at the age, demographics, all of that stuff. But also, one of the things that we all have to do is look at disease management or better preventive care, so you can reduce the costs of the longer-term illnesses like diabetes, hypertension, things of that nature.
And then let me ask you, there's been some conversation about, and I don't know if there's clear understanding, about the potential merging of administrative costs across pensions. Give us your thumbnail of what you believe that is, because I've heard so many different statements about it, and I'm unclear of exactly what the ultimate recommendation or goal would be.
So the independent fiduciary standards or services, IFS, auditor had suggested or recommended that all 3, the the two pension systems, Fire and Police Pensions and Lacers, merge their assets, so their investment portfolio. That is something that's considered as a best practice, and you see that across the board. Lacera, the county system, has that, where they have multiple plans, but they have one investment board, and they combine all the assets. Same is the case with CalPERS. They have a $200 billion portfolio, but they manage the plan for over 1,100 different agencies, municipalities. So that's kind of what's out there. So it recommended combining the two investment portfolios of the Fire and Police Pensions and Lacers to find economies of scale. As you may know, we share the same custodian bank, we share the same actuary, we share the same investment consultants, and oftentimes invest in the same investment funds. So there are certain synergies and economies of scale that you can realize. So they'll reduce the administrative costs and management fees perhaps, but also looking at, if you combine the two systems, you're looking at total portfolio of $24 billion. So you can be a bigger player in the investment world, have greater bargaining power in negotiating investment fees and different terms and conditions of contracts.
And then my final question, I think we brought this up either in one of our budget hearings. It appears that, what do we have, 4 pension systems in the city, and they all go to the same 3 or 4 firms for legal advice, and whether that advice is applicable to where, instead of paying them 4 times, to where we get the benefit of actuarial information as a city, as opposed to each plan having to pay the same bank of attorneys. Is that reasonable?
Well, with respect to outside counsel, there are 3 pension funds: the DWP Employees Retirement System, the Fire and Police Pensions, and the Lacers, the one for civilians. So there are 3 pension plans. The general counsel is provided by the city attorney's office. The outside counsel is also provided through the city attorney's office, where everything gets administered through the city attorney. We are already looking, share the outside counsel, usually the same tax counsel, the same fiduciary counsel, the same real estate counsel, other alternative investments. So it is a coordinated effort between the city attorney's office and the two systems. So I think there's probably not as much inefficiencies in the attorney area as there is maybe in the investment manager side, where you probably, all the different systems are paying the same managers different fees. So there's definitely efficiencies that can be discovered by working and coordinating better.
I just want to say we've enjoyed working with you. I'm glad you're going to still be part of the city family, just a different place. So.
Thank you.
Congratulations, and you led us and helped us get through one of our toughest budget seasons, and we appreciate that. And you'll still be around, so we won't necessarily miss you because you'll still be around.
That's right.
Congratulations, and I think this is a great appointment.
Yeah, I also want to add that it's been a pleasure for me as well. As you said, this is the 2 of the most difficult budgets that we've gone through, and I would say that it's been a great partnership between the mayor's office and the council staff and CLA and CAO. So I feel I'm leaving a much stronger and more experienced person, and with that, I hope I will be able to lead Lacers and make it a better system over there. Thank you very much.
Well, as they say, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, so you're probably a lot stronger. Just 2 questions. One, dealing with the combining of the other systems. And if I'm not mistaken, and tell me if I am, because I'm not sure, but has not been the police fire pension system a lot more success? While Lacers have been successful, police fire has been more successful in their investment portfolio. Aren't they at 104% funded or something like that? Right.
They have a higher funded ratio, but I would say in terms of the investment performance, if you look at the annual returns, they've been very comparable. I think depending on which time period you look at, if it's a 3-year or a 3-month or 1 year, you'll see one system is done better than the other, but overall they've performed pretty comparably. Both systems exceeded, I think Lacers had 19.4% returns last year. Fire and Police Pensions was somewhere around there, about 18%, 19% also. So both systems have performed quite well. And that really goes to sticking to the investment policies, having good asset allocation, and diversifying the portfolios.
Yeah, well, we've been very lucky in our systems. They've been very successful, and I appreciate that. I hear a lot of opposition from police and fire saying, well, we don't want to do that. And is it just because they would lose control then of their own system?
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of different reasons. There's no set way that it has to be when you merge the two funds. I don't know if you recall, prior to Tier 5 and drop, even within fire and police pensions, each tier had its own portfolio. When we implemented Tier 5, we combined all the assets for all 5 tiers. So it's a practice that, we've done in the past where you can allocate the cost and liabilities for each tier or each benefit without compromising the other while still pooling the investments together. So you should have higher returns. So it shouldn't have that impact, but those are the concerns, whatever the concerns are, that's a process that we would have to go through, making sure the stakeholders have their input, the unions, the council, the mayor's office, the board, the retirees, everyone, and this would require a charter change. So it would ultimately go to the voters to decide, but those are all the issues that have to be resolved before we even make a decision to do that.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to that discussion to clarify in my mind all these issues. And lastly, going back to a discussion we've had before, and the approach was in dealing with the 5-year versus 7-year smoothing, that the board had said a couple years ago, hey, things in the market are good, that's not when you make changes. Let's wait till there's a down market, or when we've had moments of down market, very volatile this year, but is there a point in time this year when that would make sense to have that discussion again?
In fact, the board is planning to have that review again.
Okay.
In fact, we have an experience study that's coming up, so that would be the appropriate time to look at the asset smoothing. You can go anywhere from 5 years to 15 years, so looking at what the appropriate smoothing period is, but also bearing in mind that once you change it, it's a permanent change, because you don't want to adapt it and modify it just to match your contributions. You want to see on the overall long-term, picture that it
Sounds like
makes
a
the most
discussion we
sense.
recently had about the pension system. So, anyway, I look forward to that discussion, too. Thank you very much.
Well, first of all, congratulations, and you're an asset to all of us, and really a treasure, so we look forward to your leadership in this new role.
Thank you very much.
There's a couple of things that we have to raise. There is an elephant in the room, and something you put in the back of your brain we have to work on. Pension and health care costs are sinking many private sector firms. They can't do it anymore. And so we find ourselves as a city continuing great benefits negotiated in the sunshine for both health and pension. Health care costs have spiraled out of control. If we weren't elected by the unions and the people, we would be a little difficult like the private sector is with its retirees right now, but we're not. We even find that we spend more money in our budget these days on maintaining our workforce and its benefit package than the services that the people's taxes expect it to be used. It's a crisis. It has to be focused on. Have we thought about, or can you think about, a 2-tier system where new employees come under less of a generous health and pension package going forward as the percentage of our city budget goes toward these services? We can no longer, as a city, in all integrity and honesty, give our employees, new ones coming in, the same benefits that we have to obviously grandfather in present employees and retirees. Have you given it any thought?
In my current position, I've given a great deal of thought, but as Lacers, in my position at Lacers, I'm not in a position to develop or define the benefits. As you know, it's the mayor and council that negotiates and also decides on what the benefit structure would be. Lacers and the board is responsible for administering the plans and managing the plans and providing advice and the research information so that you can make decisions. And that's what I will be more than happy to do, because what you want to look at is what is the workforce that you have, what kind of workforce do you want to have in the future, and designing benefits that meet those needs. And so whether that involve another tier, that's something that could be looked at, and we'd be more than happy to provide that information.
I love that information so the policymakers can take a deep look. We can't ignore the reality of our situation. And then younger employees or people that work for me at will, they're forced to put into pension programs monies where they might not want to. they might want to have more flexibility with their money, maybe put it into some kind of a special fund or an IRA or some kind of other thing. Can we create some flexibility and not that you must put your money into that? I mean, they're not going to be around here for 30, 40 years, some of them, and they want the option at least to make that decision. You think we can look into that? Too?
Absolutely, and as you know, we already have a defined contribution plan, but right now it's limited to the elected officers, the limited term plan, which is basically the type of thing you're talking about.
Yeah. And let's look into that and how we can bring it to other people too. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just ask, just for clarity, on your salary setting, is that done by your board?
Right.
Okay, and that's after your appointment?
Maybe Ruth can answer. She's the personnel director for Lacers.
The starting salary has already been negotiated. It does need to be presented to our board for final confirmation.
That's not something the council is involved with, that's by the board.
No, sir, it is not.
Which one?
No, the council is not involved.
That's what I wanted to clarify.
The board negotiates it directly with the candidate.
Let me just ask one other question, and this has come up periodically in the sense that whether we have the boards that review not only the pension as far as investment, but the same board is also asked to make decisions of whether people basically are eligible for a pension. And it comes into, in some instances, some fairly extensive review of medical records and things. And one of the concerns I always had is whether you have people multitasking to where are they the qualifications of doing both are consistent with getting the best product, or should there be some separation of people that have expertise about medical and things of that nature and people who have expertise about investments? Are those two groups of people that we should be?
It is one board. It's the board, Lacers board, that makes those determinations in terms of the retirement benefit. But in terms of just your regular retirement, normal retirement, that's pretty well established. It's based on, it's a defined benefit plan, so it's once you meet the eligibility criteria, then you're eligible for the retirement benefit. Now, I think you're referring to the disability retirement.
Those are the ones that I think, because generally if you're eligible, you sign the papers. And
right. So how that happens, though, is that Lacers disability plan, as you know, you can receive up to 33% of your retirement. But it goes through a very extensive process. So once you file for disability, you have to be examined by 3 doctors. The 3 doctors have to determine whether you have a permanent disability and whether or not you can perform the duties of your job. And with Lacers disability, it's very specific. It's not, can you do if you're a management analyst, it's not, can you do the duties of a management analyst anywhere. It's no, specific to your job and your department. So that's what they look at. So after that review, if it's unanimous, it goes to the board, and through the staff reports, the board makes a determination. It's not as very subjective as, let's say, the fire and police pensions, where the board determines the level of coverage. It could be anywhere from 50% to 90%. With the civilian retirement system, it's very limited. So there's not as much subjective, interpretation or analysis involved.
Because the civilian pension is what, you said 30%?
For Lacers, yeah, it's
For Lacers, 30% max.
right, 33%.
33% for injured on duty or medical.
Right, and it doesn't necessarily have to be injury on duty.
Just be
It can be medical disability.
Okay.
And also, just so you know, we have an automatic review too. So depending on the type of disability, after 5 years, for instance, we will do a re-examination to make sure that you are still disabled. If you are not, then there's a process to return the person back to work.
Okay. And also, is that medical, regardless of what type of medical, is tax-free? Or is there taxation on those?
No, disability retirement is taxable income.
Okay. So this is not like the sworn pension?
Right.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Okay, thank you.
When does it become official? After we adopt it, or are you started over?
I
started.
Once it's adopted, and I believe the mayor's confirmed already, so I start on July 7th. So I'll take a few weeks off.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
But do not take too much off, because I'm soon to be a participant in Lacers, and I want you on the job doing it right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just make the record reflect Mr. Weezar's here, because when we started this discussion, I didn't include him. Next item.
Okay. Item number 8 are El Pueblo and CAO reports relative to a lease agreement between El Pueblo and Camachos Incorporated to operate a cafe at the Simpson-Jones Building. The Arts, Parks, Health, and Aging Committee recommended approval of the CAO recommendations.
Good afternoon.
Let me ask Mr. Rosenthal, this is one of, you want to start?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First, let me just one big overview. Tell me what you've negotiated, and is it market value?
What we've negotiated, or what we're proposing to bring forward for council approval, is a coffee house lease, 5-year, with a 5-year extension subject to the city approval, for a Latino-themed business combining coffee house with retail sales, including arts and crafts, folk art, music, and books. The leasee would provide entertainment, or assure that there's entertainment in the evening, poetry readings, art exhibits. They've worked with self-help graphics to ensure that that takes place. From a fiscal standpoint, the first year, or the first 12 months, would generate approximately $66,000 in rent, along with $4,100 in CAM charges, for a balance of $70,000. Incrementally, it would go up over a 5-year period, where the square footage cost or rate is $1.60 in year 1. It ends in year 5 at $2. The total anticipated income to El Pueblo for that 5-year span would be $411,000. Additionally, the proposed agreement includes provisions for the city to share in a percentage rate, such that if the leasee is successful, El Pueblo becomes successful as well, to the tune of 7.5% of gross receipts for years 1 through 3 and 8% thereafter. So that, for instance, if the leasee raises $500,000, that would generate an additional $37,500 for El Pueblo. We went through a formal request for proposal process. We brought that forward to the commission, to the El Pueblo Commission, who approved it and has then directed us to come forward to you for your approval. With respect to market rates, what we did is we did a survey at the time, keeping in mind this project has been with us for about 18 months, a little bit longer than that. And at the time, our property manager did a survey of like-minded businesses, found that depending on adjustments, comparable rates for location, lease terms, and physical characteristics, there are some that were below what we're recommending, that were some that were higher. And based on, again, lease terms, location, physical characteristics, we believe that this is a competitive bid for 5 years. And in addition, because we are in a position to be sharing some of the wealth, meaning a 7.5% increase for any profit sharing, that we believe that this is extremely competitive, and we recommend approval of it.
And do you see this as a model and a timeline for reevaluating the other tenants of El Pueblo and bringing them up to market rate? Is this going to be the cornerstone, the template, or how does this?
I believe that's the case. This proposed agreement is similar, and I believe the city attorney could opine on that, but that is indeed the case. Keeping in mind that we will have a more formal review of market rates that would be rolled into those proposed agreements in the fall.
In the fall. So we'll have a more in-depth analysis of what it may be for other potentials. People
Yes,
have it all
yes,
clear
we
up
will.
front. Tell me, why aren't you charging them for water usage? Why aren't you meter them separately and make them pay for it?
We actually will be. The Simpson-Jones building, or the former Bank of America building, has been unoccupied since, for approximately 10 years.
Yeah.
There is a meter there, it's just not operable. When the leasee comes in, he will be, or she will be directed to communicate to DWP, and we'll reactivate that meter. In the meanwhile, as there's construction and things going on there, which is sizable for El Pueblo right now, we would be capturing those dollars and then prorating it and billing the.
So they'll have their own meter and they will
Absolutely.
pay for their own.
We don't intend on paying for anybody's bills.
That's good to me. Mr. Weezer?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Andrade, and my staff has been working closely with your staff in coming up to the point where we are today. In fact, we've been prodding El Pueblo to come up with a report that we're going to get in July that will look at all the leases. And I understand that some tenants have already agreed to do, they've penciled in and signed the dotted line, and we've got more to do as well. Our goal, as we've been talking about these last couple of years, has been to make El Pueblo self-sufficient. Each year we come back and take from the general fund when in fact we know that the place, if we look at it more intently, we could find more revenue for it to provide the type of support it's been providing so that we get more tourists, we continue to celebrate our birthplace of the city of Los Angeles, and to improve the place. And I know compared to the last few years, the place has definitely improved. And I want to thank you and its previous general manager for the work you did there to bring it up to the place it is. In the past, we understand that there hadn't been a lot of attention to the books, to how we are operating the place. We've come a long way. In fact, approving a new parking structure, rate structure, that is something that many people thought wouldn't be possible. But we brought the tenants along, convinced them that it was the right thing to do. We convinced them that they wouldn't lose business. We convinced them that it was in the best interest of not only El Pueblo, but the city as a whole. This one here, this one lease we see before us, in my conversations with you, and as you mentioned now, it is market rate. At the end of the day, when you look at the profit sharing and you look at other possibilities in terms of income that we will have for El Pueblo. And I like the idea that it will be a template because it brings us, one of the things that was a problem before with the other leases was that we couldn't come up with agreed upon language that the city attorney could live with, that the tenants could live with. And I think this, if we do use it as a template, it's going to kickstart the discussions we have in July when the report comes out that looks at all the other leases. So I'm excited about this. Some of your, you've already answered some of my questions, particularly the one about the water. I just think that in all fairness, not only that the state has declared a possible drought, and here in our city we've announced a conservation plan, and I just don't like the idea that we're signing leases where we don't have no accountability as to water usage. So I understand it's on our side, on the city side, that we put in those meters, and once those meters are in, then we will be in a place to actually have charge for whatever usage they have. So thank you for all your work. My questions have been answered, and I look forward to getting the report in July. I know that my staff and myself have been negotiating the heavy politics that goes on and has been going on for a long time. We've been in the trenches negotiating those bullets and those better way to put it is those minefields, but I think we've come a long way. We just have to have some patience to get the right information before us to make the right decision and not rush into something that we may make matters worse. We need that good information. Once we have it in July, I think we're in a good position to move forward with the other leases. So thank you for all your work, because I know you've been putting a lot of time into not only this lease but all the other leases out of Pueblo.
Thank you, Councilman, and I want to thank you for your leadership towards that end, because it clearly is a team effort, not only from El Pueblo's side, but also from Council District 14 and from the mayor, from the CAO, and all the partners here. It's a team effort, and I want to thank you publicly for all your leadership.
Right. Thank you.
Mr. Rosendahl took care of my question.
Okay. Let me just ask just a couple of questions. What is the expected revenue over the 5-year lease?
The expected revenue, the guaranteed revenue.
Guaranteed.
Minimum revenue base is $411,048.
So that's for the 5 years.
Correct.
Your 08-09 figures have already been programmed into your budget?
It has.
The expectation, okay. The other issue is...
Or a portion thereof.
For the portion of the 411. The other issue is that does any of the properties there in El Pueblo provide the validated parking, or is that something we use the parking lot with the expanded rates? Or are they validated?
There's a program through GSD where merchants can purchase validation books and use that to, as part of their incentives for their businesses, they can do that. There are stakeholders there that I sign off on, volunteer docents, and I know that we're working with Ms. Maeda in the CAO's office to provide a report on what extent that is. We have a number of volunteers and stakeholders that do park there.
I'm not concerned. I think on the volunteers are people that help you run the operation. I think the issue is on dealing with, and I think Ms. Grew brought it up in the budget hearings about validation for customers. If General Services has that book available, do those revenues go into your allocation for parking? Does it go into General Service? Where does that, those funds go?
All the revenue comes into to El Pueblo Trust Fund.
Okay. So that even though they may buy a book from General Services, it goes into your trust fund?
That's
so
correct.
You have an accounting of it. Okay. Thank you very much.
And one final question. How long has this building been vacant?
At least 10 years.
10 years?
Yes.
Wow. So we're making use of available space to not only recognize more revenue, but provide a service to
Yes.
the area, right?
Yeah. There has been an ATM associated with it. That's being moved. We're working with some banks to reset that elsewhere, which also generates a modicum of income for us as well.
Thank you. All right. We'll move item 8. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 11 is a report from the Financial Management System Advisory Oversight Committee relative to a delay in the FMS contract negotiations. ITGS committee considered the above matter and made no recommendation.
Good afternoon, Rushmore Cervantes with the Controller's Office, along with Randy Levin with ITA. I'm going to give you just a quick update, really somewhat the same as what we had provided when we were at the Ad Hoc Committee for Budget and Finance Committee. As you know, we're in negotiations with CGI AMS. We selected that firm to provide a variety of financial components. We've scaled back the version that we originally went out to RFP for, primarily due to budgetary constraints. It may work out in the long run. Once we actually end up moving forward with this particular module, it'll include the general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, cost accounting. That'll take care of the backbone, and then thereafter, then the city will look at other potential options to other modules to add to that so that we have truly an enterprise resource planning system that could include a new budget system, a new procurement system, and that will integrate into the payroll system. The city attorney's office is negotiating, actually even today they were negotiating with CGI's city attorneys, or their attorneys, excuse me. Of the 15 exhibits that are in the contract, 14 have been resolved, so we're down to just one, so we're looking at the payment schedule. And there are a few other terms and conditions that we're reviewing right now, looking primarily at liability issues that we need to resolve. We're working with the CAO's office and their risk management division to resolve any issues there may be there so that we have a tight product for the mayor and council to consider. The administrative committee will be meeting, looks like July 7th. At that time, we would like to be able to finalize our report that'll go before the mayor and council. That'll include the contract, it'll include the location, which most likely will be the Garland Building. We've been working with the Department of General Services to identify a space there that has been previously occupied by the Department of Community Development. And then lastly, the organizational structure, what the staffing will look like and the reporting so that you will know on a quarterly basis or whatever reporting period that is decided by the mayor and council as to when you want to hear reports back from that committee. Part of this process is to try to push down authority down to the lower levels because we're going to be working with subject matter experts from a variety of departments, and we really want to push it on to them to have them make the decisions and report those decisions that have been made back to this committee. The project as a whole, once it's been executed, will be a 2-year project, and then again, the city council and the mayor will have to make decisions thereafter based on our recommendations to move forward thereafter. We hope that we'll have a report released by sometime mid to late July once our oversight committee has blessed our findings that the team has been working on.
Let me just ask, and I want to thank you. You took time to pull all this together. We were a little frustrated initially, but I think we're moving. One of the things I'd like to see, if your department could just give a thumbnail update for the committee report, because what we're going by is a July 3rd, 2007 report, and there's a lot of progress that's been made since then. So when it gets to council, if we could have a thumbnail where you could provide the clerk to put that in the committee, I think we would bring everybody up as much as we can up to date in where we are as it relates to the closeness of bringing this system online. Everybody's interested. They know it's an expensive system, but I think if we forwarded the 07 report, we'd get more questions than answers. And so if we could get that in the committee, I think it would be
We
very...
can provide an
what
updated
you-
report.
What you provided verbally and what's the expectation during July, August, I think would clarify it a great deal.
Certainly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, because all we were looking at was this as a report, and when you looked at it, it had that you'd begun negotiations in December of 2006, and it's 18 months later. And I think that the system, I know we've been working with you, Randy, as far as overall having a system that is, coordinated with the rest of the city system, but I think we're anxious to get this done. I know you're anxious to get this done too, as part of this, but it's been a long time. And I think quite as we saw in the report that it said there'd been how many different, ITAs and chief deputy controllers and all of that, but the process should still move forward regardless of that, those back and forth. And in some ways, it's even more important to have it move forward during that time period because we've lost a lot of time. What's if July 2007 you anticipate finishing negotiations, what's the implementation date or beginning of the implementation date?
Well, actually, it'd be July 2008 that we hope to have that report released for the committee and council and ultimately the mayor's approval. Once we receive the approval from the mayor and council, it would be thereafter. So hopefully, August, September, in that range. We'd like to fast track this as soon as possible.
That's when the contract would be finalized. But
That's
what about the
I'm sorry.
implementation date?
Well, the implementation date would be it's between 18 to 24 months. We have to begin this, I should say have to, but it's ideal to begin going live with a system like this financial system on July 1st, beginning of a fiscal year. So our target right now is July 2010. So when we bring this report before mayor and council, we're going to ask that whatever number of committees that may need to hear this, try to consolidate them to have joint committees so that we can move this forward as quickly as possible.
2 years.
Yes, we're looking for a 2-year implementation. Hey, Randy may be able to add more to that.
I know it only appears that we're doing 4 modules, but 40 modules in a city with 42 departments, with systems as old as we have, we're looking at replacing approximately 80 systems with those 4 modules. So it's quite a bit of work, just to give you some context. So, and in addition to that, we're really going to do some significant business process, re-engineering. We don't want to emulate what we do today. We don't think that would be a prudent thing.
But I think that as things have changed in the last 4 years and changed in the last year and a half since you began negotiations to when it's implemented in 2 years from now, is there flexibility within that system as you're going forward to accommodate all the changes in technology as we go ahead? Is a set system as it is?
The system itself, it's a package, but CGI is flexible in terms of adding in additional enhancements, and they do deliver functionality on a regular basis. We're going to try and stick to the package as vanilla as possible and not modify it, because we've gone down that road before, which you will hear later with SMS. We're trying to get out of, so we're going to try and do this much smarter. If there's ways we can implement sooner, we certainly are going to look at it. It's a gargantuan task, because this is analogous to ripping out the heart of a patient and then putting in a new heart, and then all the arteries spawn from there. So that's really what we're trying to do here.
Well, if there's any, positions in which we can push this forward to get it moving even more quickly. I mean, I know it's going to come to this committee and ITGS and the full city council, but if there's any hiccups, let us know rather than it
Okay.
going on.
I would think a heart transplant probably was a lot easier than what you've described so far in this system. What I'd like to see in your plan that shows the 2010 implementation date, when this comes back, would you show us a milestones that will achieve that? because I think what we've lacked here is an understanding of what we were trying to achieve and when it would get done. And so if you're saying 2010 is now our target, I'd like to see, make sure what those milestones are so that we can ask questions. If it slips again, why are we slipping here? And we expect this done by this date, so. Okay, thank you.
No, I'm just very happy with your leadership, and I'll remember that when we were in the budget process, you did talk about how you were doing zero-based budgeting, how you were looking at people. Just from an internal efficiency standpoint, you've proven to me that you're a real pro, and with this, it also continues to confirm the direction that I'm pleased you're taking us in.
Thank you.
Yeah. The only thing I have is that if we could, in your information that you give the clerk, could you touch on, I think, the 9 positions, whether they are going to be used during this fiscal year, or are they positions that are authorized, just what the current status of what was requested back when, and see if that is still something that we are recommending today. But just, I think it'd be very helpful, just as you've given a verbal today, as best we can without writing reams and reams of paper, allow the clerk to have that up-to-date information, so when it goes to council, everyone will have as up-to-date information as possible.
Okay,
Thank you. We'll move that item.
thank you.
Item number 13 is a joint CAO-CLA report relative to revising the compensation to the city from Divine Racing of Los Angeles for the Los Angeles Marathon.
We only got, 2 items. Just fairly. Hello there.
Hello.
I just wanted, the only reason I held this is just to thank your staff and the CEO coming together, because I don't believe anyone knew the impact of changing the route on the vendor, and to go back and to allow...
Or on the city.
Or on the city, yeah. But again, it's something that was done while we're in a contract. The thing I was wondering is that as you've gone through this template, is this going to be the guidelines that in the future we'll use for triathlons and other marathons? Is this going to be the standard as we talk about how we seek full reimbursement?
My view of this change is that because the city unilaterally asked for the change, and it was found to be the sole source of the extraordinary cost increases on both sides, that if that were to happen with the triathlon, that I would recommend the same sort of adjustment be made if the situation was identical. However, when we go to, when we get the contractor for the triathlon, whether we go through the competitive process or however we get there, for the next contract, I would recommend that whatever route is being put forth by the contractor be the baseline.
But I think this would be in the future, when this contract is over, would there then be a new baseline?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that would be my expectation. And I also wanted to...
Is it going to cost us, it'll cost us $800,000 more a year to do the marathon in the years coming forward?
If the route stays the same and we have the same circumstances, I would expect the cost to be similar.
And when is the contract up?
Next year?
Interesting that you should ask that. The contract that we have in place goes through 2015. However, there was an article in the Los Angeles Times that spoke about a potential sale of the marathon.
And that triggers a new contract if it's sold.
Yes, the terms of the existing agreement provide that a new owner would have the ability to operate a marathon for 1 year after they buy the race. However, after that, it would be the city's option whether or not we want to negotiate a new contract or go out to bid or whatever the case may be.
I'm just got some questions. I'm more confused than I want to be. These amounts will be credited against the 2000, 2007, 2008 invoices, correct? Those 2 years?
Yes.
What will be the ongoing effect of this change on future years beyond 2008?
Well, we would expect the same sort of discount to be made as long as we keep the same route that we used in 2007 and 2008. And if there is a new buyer, then things would change. But if it's with the current owner, then through 2015, we would probably have the same sorts of discounts. Or
Does this set a precedent for other events that may incur extra costs due to the city's decisions on route designation or other requirements? Does it set a precedent?
I think it would set a precedent on how you might want to handle things, as long as all the circumstances are identical.
Has the marathon operator threatened litigation if the city doesn't revise the invoices to reflect the discount?
Not that I'm aware of.
Has the city attorney looked at this to gauge the potential for a lawsuit?
The city attorney's here.
Good afternoon. Ted Jordan from the City Attorney's Office.
Hi, Ted.
We looked at it. We didn't look at this from the perspective of lawsuit, and I'm not aware of any threatened litigation. I guess, might I ask you clarification as to what specifically?
Well, I'm just looking at other groups that are doing stuff, like, for instance, the city is giving a discount for extra costs to marathon, but in years past, the triathlon has experienced cost increases and hasn't complained or asked for any bailout from the city. You know, it can be concluded that discount to marathon sets a bad precedent for the city giving discounts to event operators. I mean, I'm just looking at the transparency of why are we bailing them out? Why are we doing this? And how come we find ourselves in this situation? And aren't we kind of, in a way, when you look at the triathlon, we went through a whole bunch of stuff with them, treated differently?
Well, I think that, as I would look at these, they are different events, and they each have their own situations and circumstances. With respect to the marathon, one of the recommendations I think that are before you now would be to have the city sit down with a marathon operator and try to figure out ways to, contain or curb these costs that were as a result of the course change. But I would look at each, event as a separate situation that is negotiated separately.
And I think the biggest difference I see with the triathlon contract is that contract had a set route that the contractor had included in the contract. And any route changes, I don't believe, were at the city's request or were nearly at the magnitude that we're talking about, the change that we requested of the marathon organizer.
If I could also point out, the contract with the marathon operator does allow the city to change the course. And I look at the proposal here as more of, it's a business decision. I don't see it as a legal decision. As to whether it sets a precedent for future events, it's a kind of a business decision. Legally, we can continue to do this, or we can take a more firm approach. But the reality is, we do what we can from a business standpoint to have the marathon go forward.
Okay. If the group who owns the LA Marathon are thinking of selling it, which is a rumor out there, is there any truth to that?
The LA Times reported it last week. I haven't had any direct contact with them, so I don't know.
Then when you look at it, you say, if we could ask them and check it out, we're in the process of working with them. There are other people interested, but I mean, if the city absorbs this debt, if a potential purchaser of Marathon be able to make good on the debt after purchasing, in other words, can it be part of how you come in and buy out this Marathon? Rather than our money, maybe an outside vendor who might want to buy it could pick up that tab. Wouldn't that be something to look at? I'm sure in your conversations with them, if the Times, piece has facts in there, that they are up for sale. And here we're going to bail them out and then, let somebody else come in and get it for that particular price. Isn't this a waste of taxpayers' money?
I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as a waste, but there's certainly fair points. Keep in mind, we don't have the contractual right to block a sale. The sale can happen, they give us 30 days' notice, it happens. What we can do is immediately following the next successive marathon, so in this case, if there was a sale today, the next marathon is '09, immediately following the '09 marathon, the city can terminate the contract, or give its intent to renegotiate. In terms of the negotiations with respect to the sale, we're not really involved in that because we don't have to approve it. But it's certainly a very fair thing to ask and to tell the current marathon operator, look, this deal is only as valuable as it is because it's a contract that goes to 2015. We can pull the plug in 2009 if we choose to. And the issue of payment today can be factored into that.
If it can be factored into that, can we make that part of our agreement here?
Well, keep in mind, though, again, we don't have the right to block the sale, so...
I know, but can we make a contingent that if they sell, we can be made whole or something like that? It would stop us from making that as a...
Legally, we could do anything like that we choose to.
Legally, we can do that.
We're not precluded from doing that.
We're not precluded.
We don't necessarily have the kind of leverage that we would if we had to approve the sale today.
I understand. But don't you have leverage now when we're in the position where there are those costs, there is the discussion that they might sell it, the year 2015 is today's 2008, that we could make it a condition that if they find a buyer that within that process the city gets reimbursed for this, or somehow bring it out the way you just described as part of our agreement?
I don't see any reason why we couldn't do that. I can't guarantee that if the city tried to do that, it would succeed, but there is absolutely no reason why we couldn't push.
Do you recommend that we look into that as a strategy?
Yeah, again, taking off my city attorney legal hat, it's a business issue. I think we should endeavor to get whatever we can, because the point of the full cost reimbursement was that we get full cost reimbursement. The things such as transportation costs, the $75,000 charge for rides for the runners, that's obviously a new thing when it's a point-to-point marathon, because you now are finishing someplace far away from the starting line. However, under the original contract, the marathon operator is supposed to provide for transportation costs. So, yes, we took a decision unilaterally that raised their operating expense. But on the other hand, they make a profit from the race. At least they are a for-profit company. So my recommendation is we should try to get what we can, because the point of the marathon amendment last year, or 2 years ago, was that we get full cost reimbursement. But we also have to be practical as to what we can and can't get.
Mr. Chair, can we put that in a motion form in approving this?
Yeah. One of the things, I just want to clarify one thing. I don't know if we consider this a bailout. I think what the whole thing started with is that we were going after full cost recovery with a circular route, and then we found out that 30-some% of the increased charges was directly related to the specific route the city demanded, not the contractor. And I think the first year that we made some adjustment was that after we decided to go to a point-to-point, the vendor actually lost access to the convention center because of the delay in what date it was going to be, so we made some adjustments there. But I think that the fact that the language in the original contract says if you sell it, you have the ability to come back within a year and create a new baseline is where I think most of your issues can be addressed. Here, what we're trying to do is just adjust 207 and 08, and if they sell it, I don't believe we want to complicate the sale, but we do have the ability within a year to come back and say this is the new baseline because this is now the standard route. That's how I would think we'd want to deal with it.
And the contract language supports that. It says, after the first marathon following the sale, we can terminate or we can give them our notice that we intend to renegotiate. And obviously, a renegotiated contract could set the baseline wherever the parties agree. And if we are unsuccessful in renegotiating something, then we still have the right to terminate.
Just for a history standpoint, who in the council or in the city changed the route, and did they not look into consideration that this would dramatically change the cost factor? How was that decision made?
I'm not sure. I think
basically it was made. I think the first emphasis was the number of churches in the community brought it to the mayor's attention that church attendance and such was down because of the circular route, and I believe between the mayor's office and primarily Tom LeBon's, the point-to-point route became the issue, and then it was adopted. I don't think anyone costed out during that process, but we clearly knew that there were double the number of intersections that were affected by the point-to-point than the circular. And I think it was clear that there were more intersections. That was brought to our attention by DOT, but no one cost out what the true cost would be to have the significantly more intersections.
So that happened after the fact.
Well, yeah, and their contract was in play with a circular route, and that they basically were relying on, it was the city that imposed the point-to-point.
Thanks.
And we'd also recommend that you ask, that the city ask for the payment, whatever, the reduced payment, to be made within 15 days after council approval.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair because we have, what, 2 years in the rears?
Their payment actually was due in full 45 days following the 2007 marathon, and we've received $120,000 rather than the $800,000, which was supposed to be paid, and then we would give them back whatever the agreement was, but they didn't pay us the $800,000. So
are we going to charge them interest for not paying us? Some kind of a way, get that time value of money?
we could.
Yeah, I don't know if that's in the contract, but I don't think anybody be opposed to that.
I certainly wouldn't. The contract provided that they were supposed to pay in full, and if they protest the amount, they still pay in full, and then there's an audit, and if there is money going back.
So
to
the
them.
city would have been earning the interest had they followed the contract. And the city attorney has also advised that we don't need a formal contract amendment, that these changes for 2007 and 8 can be made through a letter agreement.
Yeah.
More of an exchange of writings. It's really just a agreement to
Is there
accept
a
less.
penalty associated with not paying on time, or is it just the time cost of money?
There were no liquidated damages in the contract for late payment. I mean, obviously, failing to pay is a breach.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to the interest and whatever else is also part of that when you bring it to the council.
If we can have that in the committee report, what that would amount to for the interest for late payment, because the key was they were supposed to pay, and then any reimbursements you would
Right.
reimburse. The fact that they've not paid, then what would be the interest for those 2 operating years?
Well, I think with lawsuits, isn't 7% the typical or the statutory interest rate that's charged?
If there's a legal standard for when there's damages, we can provide that. I don't.
All right. So we can have that, and give that to the clerk for the
Yes,
committee.
we will.
Okay.
Do you mean just for clarification, do you mean interest on the amount they're going to pay us, or interest on what the total bill would have been? Because under the contract, they would have normally paid the full amount, let us know they were protesting that, we would have had some type of audit, and then we would have given them money back. Do you mean, what?
I haven't thought it out that far. I think
Okay.
we'd ask for your recommendation on that, because that's the way the deal goes, is you pay the full amount, and we'd reimburse if it were disputed charges.
Yeah.
And so I think, for me, you have to rely on what the city attorney. This was done for fairness, I think, from saying we didn't realize that 32% of the bill was directly related to a course change directed by the city. So I think from the city attorney's standpoint, I would have to be guided by what would be a fair penalty for non-payment.
We'll give that some thought. I think, I mean, I can make arguments going both ways.
Because I wouldn't be able to have any idea.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move that item with those directions.
Item number 14 is a joint ITA GSD report and CAO report relative to a delay in the supply management system upgrade. The Information Technology and General Services Committee took various actions, which we can summarize if you wish. Personnel Committee waived consideration.
would just like to know, and just looking at the original, because I was not at the ITGS, what was the rationale of the ITGS committee in primarily the total dollars allocated dealing with the Metafarmer contract versus the CAO's recommendation? And there's roughly about $300,000 different. Because ITA had one recommendation and the CAO had another, and the committee adopted the ITA recommendation.
It was my perspective that we needed all this money to complete this project, and rather than coming back multiple times to request this funding, what my request was for us to get it all at once so that we could clean up the data, do year-end, do our upgrade, and get to a much more stable state with the project. And given that we're also moving into August, which was CAO said 2 months from now, nobody's going to be around. I don't want to hold up this project given that period of time. And the other thing that I said was that we will give everybody whatever status reports they would like on a weekly, daily basis, a monthly basis on this project, whatever transparency you'd like, including where we are in our, in the funding, where our financials sit, as well as what progress we've made against the project plan. I just didn't feel that it was going to be prudent for us, given the amount of work that we have, to be able to come back to the committee to continue asking for money when we know exactly what we need to finish.
Okay. And then explain to us just briefly how this system, SMS, and the FMIS system interrelate with each other.
The SMS system is what we use today for procurement for more of our capital items in the city. Debbie, you want to add anything, really? And then I'll explain SMS to FMIS.
Well, the SMS system, as Randy mentioned, is our procurement system. So we're generating our orders through this system, we're receiving the goods from the vendors through this system, and we're paying or beginning the vouchering process through the system. Once we voucher in SMS, there's an interface between the SMS system and the FMIS system. The checks are actually generated through the FMIS system. In addition, in the SMS system, we have a full-blown inventory. In the city here, we have over 65 warehouses, and so we have inventory in all of those warehouses. So all of our inventory transactions are processed through the SMS system. We also have a vendor or supplier module, so our interactions or our interfacing with our vendors, having our vendors register and become eligible to receive orders, that's set up through the SMS system. We also have an e-procurement module that allows us to interface with a few vendors. We have 3 vendors right now that are on ePro, where we automatically go into the system, and then our system will tap into their system. The Office Depot contract is set up that way, and as I mentioned, there's 2 other contracts. So that it allows us to electronically, place the order, they process it, they ship it out to us, and then again, we go back into the SMS system and receive it. There's budget checking, so that we're ensuring that when we are placing orders, that we do have the money available, and that is an additional interface between the SMS system and the FMIS system.
Okay. And then let me ask, as we've asked on, I guess, one of our other large systems, at what point does that knowledge transfer begin on SMS so that it becomes an internal management system, internal maintenance system once it's implemented?
Part of this plan is to do more knowledge transfer to our team. It's evident, for me being here for a year, that we do not have the internal knowledge to run this on our own. We're going to have to hire a couple of other people to manage this system, and we're going to have to work with personnel to be able to see if we can pay market rates for this kind of configuration analysts and programmers that we need to maintain PeopleSoft. We are competing with the private sector. We're competing with the public sector, anybody that has this application. And right now, our personnel processes don't match up very well with what our requirements are. And so, given that that's a situation that's occurring with this, and it's going to occur with other technologies, we're going to have to work on a general personnel plan that's going to really allow us to be able to maintain new technologies with people that we can actually bring that have that expertise.
Any questions?
No, I think I covered it.
Okay, we'll move that item. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last item is item number 15, CAO report relative to the LA Regional Interoperable Communication System Staffing Plan.
Let me just ask a couple of questions. I think we have a pretty good handle on this issue. The thing that I'm most concerned with, and we've mentioned it before, at some point in time, we're talking about 5 years term, about $800 million, and that we have an appropriate management staff of the city, CAO, the mayor's office, CLA, ITA, as overseeing the direction of this project, and we just want to make sure that that's in place so that we can move forward on this issue. And I think the fire department's positions are part of the 0809 budget already. So has that been funded?
No, sir, the positions aren't part of the budget, but what we have
part
them.
of the grant.
We have them funded under the grant. We do have a letter in the mayor's office where they'll pay not only the direct but the indirect costs for the positions that are all 4 positions that are listed in there.
I mean, but those positions are funded in the grant. There's no
impact on the general fund for those 4 positions.
Okay. And then also, have you located space? And I think the game plan was to find city-owned space, so we're not creating additional funds for leasing?
Yes, sir. And this, we need some help from the council and basically direction on this. The Prop F and Prop Q bonds, as they scale down, there's vacant space. And just on the fire side, we've just removed 4 people out of there. So we know at Fig Plaza right now, it's been there for quite a while, there's 4 workstations, if you will. They're completely built out, the phone lines are in there, the computer cables are in there. Basically, we move in and work at 0 cost. But we would need direction to do that, because I guarantee you, if you don't give direction to do that, somebody will try to put us somewhere else, then there'll be a cost to build that out. Then eventually they'll move somebody else into Fig Plaza, they'll say, we don't like the way it's configured, and they'll want to tear that apart and build it out.
But let me ask you, with those 4 positions, there's some expectation that this unit or group is going to grow considerably over the 4.
Well, what we're looking at, Councilman, is that ultimately it may grow up to 10, and that's including a regional perspective. We may bring in some people from other police and fire departments. There's more than 10 vacant spaces right now as part of the reduction at the bond program. Ultimately, we'll have more folks when we get into the training function of this, because as you know, there's 34,000 first responders to train. We don't have to put all those people at Fig Plaza. I don't expect the staffing we would put at Fig Plaza to ever go basically over 10.
Okay. So the issue is that you said there's space available now?
It's sitting there now. It's vacant, but everything's built out because it was occupied by people recently who were working on the bond program. So if we had direction from the council to GSD to move us in there, it would be a 0 cost for the city.
Let me just, but you're assuring us that that space that's available would accommodate the core group of people needed for this project through the life of this project?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me do this. Rather than, I think we need to direct Municipal Facilities Committee to, as quickly as possible, to evaluate the space, the need of this interoperability staffing plan for citywide, not just the fire department.
Right.
And to move that to ITGS as quickly as possible so that we can have the space and save on lease spacing, but get this moving. And if we can be assured that that executive committee, or whatever we call it, with the mayor's office, CLA, CAO, and ITA are part of the oversight to monitor this $800 million plan, I think that covers
Yes.
my concerns.
Okay.
Right. Councilman, just also to make sure that you know that on the joint powers of authority, the board, city has 4 seats on that. Aside from police and fire, the chief legislative analyst and the CAO also have seats right on that. Mayor's office participates too, but the only elected official on that board is the sheriff.
Yeah. No, I understand that, but again, we just would like.
Yes, sir. Understood. I just want to make sure you knew,
No, I
right at the
understand.
top level of the whole project, we have 4 seats on there. We also have, written into the joint powers of authority, veto power. The city by itself, if it doesn't like the way it's going, can veto the whole thing.
No, I think that committee that you've put together over the last couple of years is a strong committee. We're just asking for an executive oversight function in the city. Okay.
I think that covered, on the funding, now, this is from UOSI, but how long do we have this availability to fund these positions?
The UASI grants now, starting going forward from '07, are 3-year grants.
3 years.
So basically, we have UASI '07 right now. We've accumulated $35 million so far. UASI '08 is supposed to, the funding announcements are going to be later this month or next month. The mayor's office has said basically if we as a city or UASI gets the same amount of money we did last year, that $40 million additional will go into this project for a 3-year period. But it could be much more than that because literally we've done as a UASA, we've done a much better job of developing our package to submit to the federal government. There's also a shish gap on that. So we're going to be probably in the range of $80 million here on this project within the next few months. And then each year we'll keep adding. So we could probably be up in $150 to $170 million in grant funds allocated to this project in the next couple of years.
And then what happens in 2012 if UOSI is reduced or it goes away? Then we have to look to ourselves whether we want to complete the project?
Well, there's a couple things that we're looking at. Ballot initiatives are being examined by a number of folk, both in the city, the county, and other municipalities, to look at basically examining what we pay for all the design and so forth up front, and then look at potentially a county-wide ballot initiative where everybody who lives in the county would pay basically their fair share, because this is an entire county-wide system. I think that's probably the way the thing would go at the end of the day, but there are other options that are being looked at with regards to leasing, owner builders. In the RFP, I'll ask for basically all of the options so we can bring it all in and do a good examination and come up what's going to give us the best system at the best price for our region.
Okay, so the answer to that is to be determined.
Yes,
Short version.
yes, sir. But I think that there's a lot of work being done. Is with any ballot initiative, it takes time. It takes a couple of years to, and that work is being done right now by both the county and the city.
That's good. I don't think anyone doubts the value of it. I think everybody's on that same page. It's just it's a long-term commitment without a long-term commitment for funding, and that kind of gets scary. Although that's 4 years away for those of us in the budget committee. We look that far down the road.
Right. The other thing about it is, during the life of this system, we're going to have to replace everything anyway.
Yeah.
Everybody in the county is. So we can be foolish and do it individually and have it cost a whole lot more, or we can just take the money we're going to spend anyway and be smart and get it together. And the one thing is, by putting us all together, our purchasing power is going to be a lot better than what we have individually, and we'll also have much more leverage over the vendors to get more what we want.
No, I'm just happy that the coordination is happening. It's key, obviously, to everybody's preparedness, that everything's on the same wavelength. I'll never forget New York, where the radio people and the police weren't on the same wavelength, and if they had been, there might have been lives saved. But we're, in some cases, better off because we have integrated more of our systems historically, haven't we, with the county and the city?
Well, no. Everybody still has their own radio systems. We typically either swap radios.
Yeah.
We patch as we get well into an incident. A lot of times still between LA Fire and LAPD, we're using hand signals during the day and flashlights at night to communicate.
Well, when are we going to do something with a total integrated system? Is this going to get us there?
Yes. Everybody in the entire county will carry one radio and can communicate with whomever they need to, real time when it's appropriate.
And then in the future, will it be one system so everybody has the same system?
Yes.
Okay.
That's the goal. Everybody.
What's your timetable sensing of all of that?
We feel that by the time, when we have a contract in place, it'll take 5 years to build the whole system out, design and build it. We don't look for a contract to be negotiated. I'll bet you it's going to take us 1.5 years to get finalize an RFP, release the RFP, evaluate the proposals, and actually let a contract for this thing. We're talking 6 to 7 years from now, probably before it's actually in place.
Well, let me ask you this. Can we shrink that. I mean, Motorola came and met with me. I'm sure there are other vendors out there. They're all banging on our doors. I don't know if my colleagues have met with any of these guys, but Motorola came to me, and they showed me how they have this integrated system in X, Y, and Z locations, that they could kind of bring it in tomorrow and make it happen. I don't know if they're good or bad or ugly. Don't get me wrong. I don't know anything about it. But that jogged my mind into an integrated system already in place in some places across the country. I don't want to wait 6 or 7 years.
The fact is, that's about how long it's going to take to build an integrated system. In the meantime, we're doing what we do. But you're talking about a county-wide radio system.
It's about 40,000 radios that we're looking at, and when you look at the coverage, which you look at the square footage, as well as the density.
Yeah.
I mean, requires a build out in order to be able to maintain, to create enough capacity in order to get all of those radios to be in this one system and communicate with each other.
Right. To give you a timeline, it takes a year of contract. Something this size will take a year. It takes a year of design, 2 years of construction, and then potentially a year to roll everybody onto it. Now, what the county's doing right now is they're trying to pick up TV channel 15, which is out and available. And currently, LAPD, the sheriffs, and many operate on old UHF TV channels. If we can pick that up, that'll bring 440 additional frequencies or channels, if you will, into the system, and that'll cut about a year off the time to develop the project. Because part of it is, I use the analogy, if we're remodeling a 2-bathroom house and we take one of the bathrooms out, then we all got to live in this small space over here until a new one's built. And that's what will happen with this. We'll have to take a few frequencies, move them over, and slowly bring people over the new system. If channel 15's in place, we can wholesale pretty much move people across.
I mean, God forbid, but we know we're living in troubled times,
Right.
and I don't want to wait 7 years to be candid.
That's why we're asking for your help today to get
You'll
us
get
going
your-
on this, and we'll move forward as quick as we
You'll get
can.
that, but I'd like a report back to this committee after this has gone through and you're moving in that direction. You need 3 months or 6 months to come up with a timetable that maybe shaves off a year or two, or if there's things that can be done at the level of the leadership of the county and the city. I frankly feel the urgency is now. 7 years is too far, too long. If it could end up with the catastrophic reality of some other places where, because they don't have that coordination, lives have been lost. I want to lose a single life, and if 7 years can be condensed to 3 by magic or by a meeting of the mayor and the supervisor, stuff at a level that might cause this integration process to happen. This can't be our typical patience. I don't have patience when it comes to our safety.
These aren't political issues. These are construction issues. Now, to show you some of the patience, we started on this in 1999 between LAPD and LA Fire, and we've been through 2 mayors, 2 police chiefs, 2 fire chiefs, I think a half a dozen CIOs, 4 chief information officers for LAPD, 3 of my counterparts with LAPD. We're going to be on 3 CAOs and 2 chief legislative analysts during this period of time just to try to get this done.
So this is not a good project to work on then.
And every time somebody new comes in, as Yogi Berra would say, it's deja vu all over again, when we start all over again trying to bring them up to speed on what it is that we're trying to do. And so it's been patience and persistence, but we're almost right there. If we can just get over this edge, we can move pretty quick.
But can we get a report back in 90 days of some out-of-the-box thinking of how to concentrate or shrink the 7 years?
We'll do our best, but we've shredded the box, but we'll do everything we can. We'll re-examine every possible alternative and come back to you, and
Great.
we'd look forward to that.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move item 15, but now, so we're all clear, you're going to complete the report to the Municipal Facilities Committee requesting the necessary space. Is that going to come from the fire department?
Well, I'd like to do that joint with the CAO and the CLA, because they're helping us with the entire project.
To complete that through the Municipal Facilities Committee and to ITGS as quickly as possible, so we can make some effort to get the space so that core unit will have a home. And if it's the FIG Plaza that's already built out with no lease money, that would maybe the most appropriate.
Great.
Okay. Thank you. So the CAO will
Thank you for your support.
Yeah. We'll move that on. Is that it? That's it. That's it. Thank you.
Hoo-ha.